Dibrey ha'Yamim2, 2Chronicles, chapter 29. Hizqiyahu began to reign when he was 25 years old, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Aviah, the daughter of Zechariahu. And he did what was right in the eyes of Yahuah, according to all that his father David did. In the first year of his reign, in the first month, he opened the doors of the house of Yahuah and repaired them, and brought in the Kohanim and the Levites, and gathered them in the open place to the east. And he said to them, "Listen to me, O Levites. Now kadosh yourselves, kadosh the house of Yahuah, Elohim of your fathers, and remove the uncleanness from the Kodesh place. For our fathers have trespassed and have done evil in the eyes of Yahuah our Elohim, and have forsaken him, and have turned their faces away from the Mishkan of Yahuah, and have given their backs. And they have shut the doors of the porch, and put out the lamps, and they have not burned incense or offered burnt offerings in the Kodesh place to the Elohim of Yisrael. Therefore the wrath of Yahuah fell upon Yahudah and Jerusalem, and he has given them up for a trembling, for an astonishment, and for a hissing, as you see with your eyes. And see, because of this our fathers have fallen by the sword, and our sons and our daughters and our wives are in captivity for this. Now it is in my heart to make a covenant with Yahuah Elohim of Yisrael, so that the heat of his wrath turns away from us. My sons, do not be slack, for Yahuah has chosen you to stand before him, to serve him, and to be attendants for him, and burn incense." And the Levites rose up, Mechath son of Amasai, and Yoel son of Azariahu, of the sons of the Kehathites, and of the sons of Merari, Kish son of Abdai, and Azariahu son of Yehielel, and of the Gerashonites, Yoach son of Zemah, and Adon son of Yoach, and of the sons of Elizaphan, Shimri, and Yeiel, and of the sons of Asaph, Zechariahu, and Mattaniahu, and of the sons of Heman, Yeiel, and Shemai, and of the sons of Yeduthan, Shemaiah, and Uzziel. And they gathered their brothers and kadosh themselves, and went according to the command of the sovereign at the words of Yahuah to cleanse the house of Yahuah. And the Kohanim came into the inner part of the house of Yahuah to cleanse it, and brought out all the uncleanness they found in the Hekel of Yahuah to the courtyard of the house of Yahuah. Then the Levites received it to take it outside to the Wadi Kidron. And they began to kadosh on the first day of the month, and on the 8th day of the month they came to the porch of Yahuah, and they kadosh the house of Yahuah in 8 days. And on the 16th day of the first month they had finished. Then they came in to sovereign Hizqiyahu and said, "We have cleansed all the house of Yahuah, and the altar of burnt offerings with all its utensils, and the table of the showbread with all its utensils, and all the utensils which sovereign Achaz in his reign had pushed aside when he trespassed, we have prepared and kadosh, and see, they are before the altar of Yahuah." And sovereign Hizqiyahu rose up early, and gathered the heads of the city, and went up to the house of Yahuah. And they brought 7 bulls, and 7 rams, and 7 lambs, and 7 male goats for a sin offering for the rain, for the Mikdash, and for Yahudah. And he said to the Kohanim, the sons of Aharon, to offer them on the altar of Yahuah. So they slaughtered the bulls, and the Kohanim received the blood and sprinkled it on the altar. And they slaughtered the rams and sprinkled the blood on the altar. And they slaughtered the lambs and sprinkled the blood on the altar. And they brought out the male goats of the sin offering before the sovereign and the assembly, and they laid their hands on them. And the Kohanim slaughtered them, and with their blood made a sin offering on the altar to make an atonement for all Yisrael, for the sovereign said that the burnt offering and the sin offering is for all Yisrael. And he appointed the Levites in the house of Yahuah with cymbals, with harps, and with lyres, according to the command of David, and of Gad, seer of the sovereign, and of Nathan the Nevi, for the command was by the hand of Yahuah, by the hand of his Neviim. And the Levites stood with the instruments of David, and the Kohanim with the trumpets. And Hizqiyahu gave the order to offer the burnt offering on the altar. And when the burnt offering began, the singing unto Yahuah began with the trumpets and with the instruments of David, sovereign of Yisrael. And all the assembly were bowing, and the singers singing, and the trumpeters blowing. All this until the burnt offering was completed. And at the completion of the offering, the sovereign and all who were present with him bowed and worshipped. And sovereign Hizqiyahu and the rulers ordered the Levites to sing praise to Yahuah with the words of David and of Asaph the seer. And they sang praises with gladness, and they bowed their heads and worshipped. And Hizqiyahu responded and said, Now that you have ordained yourselves to Yahuah, come near and bring slaughterings and thank offerings into the house of Yahuah. And the assembly brought in slaughterings and thank offerings, and all those whose hearts were so moved brought burnt offerings. And the number of the burnt offerings which the assembly brought was 70 bulls, 100 rams, 200 lambs, all these for a burnt offering to Yahuah. And the Kodesh gifts were 600 bulls and 3,000 sheep. Only the Kohanim were too few and were unable to skin all the burnt offerings, so their brothers the Levites helped them until the work was completed and until the other Kohanim had kadosh themselves, for the Levites were more upright of heart to kadosh themselves than the Kohanim. And there were also many burnt offerings with the fat of the peace offerings and with the drink offerings for every burnt offering. Thus the service of the house of Yahuah was re-established. And Hizqiyahu and all the people rejoiced that Elohim had prepared the people, because the matter came about so suddenly. Dibrey ha'Yamim2, 2Chronicles, chapter 30. And Hizqiyahu sent to all Yisrael and Yahudah, and he also wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh to come to the house of Yahuah at Jerusalem to perform the Pesach to Yahuah, Elohim of Yisrael. But the sovereign and his leaders and all the assembly in Jerusalem had taken counsel to perform the Pesach in the 2nd month, for they were unable to perform it at its time, because not enough Kohanim had kadosh themselves, and the people had not gathered at Jerusalem. And the matter was right in the eyes of the sovereign and in the eyes of all the assembly. And they settled the matter to send a call to all Yisrael from Beersheba to Dan to come to perform a Pesach to Yahuah, Elohim of Yisrael at Jerusalem, since they had not done it for a long time, as it is written. And the runners went to all Yisrael and Yahudah with the letters from the sovereign and his leaders, and spoke according to the command of the sovereign. Children of Yisrael, turn back to Yahuah, Elohim of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yisrael, so that he returns to the remnant of you who have escaped from the hand of the sovereigns of Ashur. And do not be like your fathers and like your brothers, who trespassed against Yahuah, Elohim of their fathers, so that he gave them up to ruin, as you see. Now do not stiffen your neck like your fathers. Stretch forth the hand to Yahuah, and come to his mikdash, which he has kadosh forever, and serve Yahuah your Elohim, so that his burning wrath turns away from you. For if you turn back to Yahuah, your brothers and your children shall be shown compassion by their captors, even to return to this land. For Yahuah your Elohim shows favor and compassion, and does not turn his face from you if you turn back to him. And the runners passed from city to city throughout the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, as far as Zebulun, but they were laughing at them and mocking them. Some from Asher and Manasseh and from Zebulun, however, humbled themselves and came to Jerusalem. Also the hand of Elohim was on Yahudah, to give them one heart to do the command of the sovereign and the rulers at the word of Yahuah. And many people, a very great assembly, gathered at Jerusalem to perform the festival of Matzot in the 2nd month. And they rose up and removed the altars that were in Jerusalem, and they removed all the incense altars and threw them into the Wadi Kidron. Then they slaughtered the Pesach on the 14th day of the 2nd month, and the Kohanim and the Levites were ashamed and kadoshed themselves and brought the burnt offerings to the house of Yahuah. And they stood in their place according to their right ruling, according to the Torah of Moshe, the man of Elohim. The Kohanim sprinkled the blood from the hand of the Levites, for many in the assembly had not kadoshed themselves. Therefore the Levites were over the slaughter of the Pesach, for everyone who was not clean, to kadosh them to Yahuah. For many of the people, many from Ephraim and Manasseh, Yisachar and Zebulun, had not been cleansed, yet they ate the Pesach contrary to what was written. But Hizqiyahu prayed for them, saying, Yahuah, who is good, provide atonement for everyone who has prepared his heart to seek Elohim, Yahuah, Elohim of his fathers, though he is not cleansed according to the cleansing of the Kodesh place. And Yahuah listened to Hizqiyahu and healed the people. And the children of Yisrael who were in Jerusalem performed the festival of Matzot 7 days with great joy. And the Levites and the Kohanim praised Yahuah day by day with instruments of praise before Yahuah. And Hizqiyahu spoke to the heart of all the Levites, those having good understanding concerning Yahuah. So they ate what was appointed 7 days, slaughtering peace offerings and making confession to Yahuah, Elohim of their fathers. And all the assembly took counsel to perform another 7 days, and they performed it another 7 days with joy. For Hizqiyahu, sovereign of Yahudah, presented to the assembly 1,000 bulls and 7,000 sheep, and the rulers presented to the assembly 1,000 bulls and 10,000 sheep, and a great number of Kohanim kadosh themselves. And all the assembly of Yahudah rejoiced, and the Kohanim and Levites and all the assembly who had come from Yisrael, and the sojourners who came from the land of Yisrael, and those who dwelt in Yahudah. And there came to be great joy in Jerusalem, for since the days of Shlomo, son of David, the sovereign of Yisrael, the like of this had not been in Jerusalem. And the Kohanim, the Levites, rose and baraked the people, and their voice was heard, and their prayer came up to his Kodesh dwelling place, to the Shemayim. Dibrey ha'Yamim2, 2Chronicles, chapter 31. And at the completion of all this, all Yisrael who were present went out to the cities of Yahudah and broke down the pillars and cut down the Asherim and tore down the high places and the altars from all Yahudah and Benjamin and in Ephraim and Manasseh, even to completion. Then all the children of Yisrael returned to their own cities, each to his possession. And Hizqiyahu appointed the divisions of the Kohanim and of the Levites according to their divisions, each according to his service of the Kohanim and Levites, for burnt offerings and peace offerings, to serve and to give thanks and to praise in the gates of the camp of Yahuah. And the sovereign allotted from his possessions for the burnt offerings, for the morning and evening burnt offerings, and for the burnt offerings for the Shabbatot, and for the new moons, and for the appointed times, as it is written in the Torah of Yahuah. And he said to the people, those who dwelt in Jerusalem, to give the portion for the Kohanim and the Levites, so that they are strengthened in the Torah of Yahuah. And as the word spread, the children of Yisrael brought large quantities of the first fruits of grain and wine and oil and honey, and of all the increase of the field. And they brought in the tithe of all a large amount. And the children of Yisrael and Yahudah, those who dwelt in the cities of Yahudah, brought the tithe of cattle and sheep, even the tithe of Kodesh gifts, which were kadosh to Yahuah their Elohim, were brought in, and they gave heaps. In the 3rd month they began to pile up the heaps, and they finished in the 7th month. And Hizqiyahu and the leaders came and saw the heaps, and they barak Yahuah and his people Yisrael. And Hizqiyahu asked the Kohanim and the Levites about the heaps. And Azariahu, the chief Kohen from the house of Zadok, answered him and said, Since they began to bring the offerings into the house of Yahuah, we have had enough to eat and have plenty left, for Yahuah has barak his people, and this great amount is left over. And Hizqiyahu ordered them to prepare rooms in the house of Yahuah, and they prepared them. Then they brought in the contribution and the tithes and the Kodesh gifts trustworthily. And Conaniah the Levite was leader over them, and Shimei his brother was the next, and Yehiel, and Azaziahu, and Nachath, and Azahel, and Yeramoth, and Yozavad, and Eliel, and Yismachiahu, and Machath, and Benayahu were overseers under the hand of Conaniah and Shimei his brother, by order of Hizqiyahu the sovereign, of Azariahu the ruler of the house of Elohim. And Koreh, son of Yimnah the Levite, the keeper of the east gate, was over the voluntary offerings to Elohim to distribute the offerings of Yahuah and the most Kodesh gifts. And under his hand were Eden and Minyamin and Yeshua and Shemayahu, Amariahu, and Shechaniahu in the cities of the Kohanim, to distribute trustworthily to their brothers by divisions, to the great as well as the small. Besides those males from 3 years old and up who were written in the genealogy, they distributed to everyone who entered the house of Yahuah his daily portion for the work of his service by his division, and to the Kohanim who were written in the genealogy according to their father's house, and to the Levites from 20 years old upward by their duties in their divisions, and to all listed in the genealogy, their little ones and their wives, their sons and daughters, all the company of them. For in their trustworthiness they kadosh themselves in Kodashah. And for the sons of Aharon the Kohanim, who were in the fields of the open land of their cities, in each and every city there were men who were called by name to distribute portions to all the males among the Kohanim, and to all who were listed by genealogies among the Levites. And Hizqiyahu did this in all Yahudah, and he did what was good and what was right and what was true before Yahuah his Elohim. And in every work that he began in the service of the house of Elohim, in the Torah and in the command to seek his Elohim with all his heart, he did and prospered. Dibrey ha'Yamim2, 2Chronicles, chapter 32. After these matters and this trustworthiness, Sancheriv, sovereign of Ashur, came, and he entered Yahudah and encamped against the cities of defense, and said to break them open to himself. And Hizqiyahu saw that Sancheriv had come, and his face turned to fight against Jerusalem, and he took counsel with his rulers and mighty men to stop the water from the springs which were outside the city, and they helped him. And many people were gathered, and they stopped all the springs and the stream that ran through the land, saying, Why should the sovereigns of Ashur come and find much water? And he strengthened himself and built up all the wall that was broken, and raised it up to the towers, and outside of it another wall, and strengthened Milo, the city of David, and made large numbers of weapons and shields. And he appointed battle officers over the people, and gathered them to him in the open space at the city gate, and spoke to their hearts, saying, Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, nor be cast down before the sovereign of Ashur, nor before all the army that is with him. For with us there are more than with him. With him is an arm of flesh, but with us is Yahuah our Elohim, to help us and to fight our battles. And the people leaned on the words of Hizqiyahu, sovereign of Yahudah. After this, Sancheriv, the sovereign of Ashur, sent his servants to Jerusalem, but he himself and all his power with him against Lachish, to Hizqiyahu, sovereign of Yahudah, and to all Yahudah who were in Jerusalem, saying, Thus said Sancheriv, the sovereign of Ashur, On what are you trusting that you remain in Jerusalem under siege? Is Hizqiyahu not persuading you to give yourselves over to die by scarcity of food and by thirst, saying, Yahuah, our Elohim, shall deliver us from the hand of the sovereign of Ashur? Has not Hizqiyahu himself taken away his high places and his altars, and ordered Yahudah and Jerusalem, saying, Bow yourselves before one altar and burn incense on it? Do you not know what I and my fathers have done to all the peoples of other lands? Were the mighty ones of the nations of those lands in any way able to deliver their lands out of my hand? Who was there among all the mighty ones of those nations that my fathers put under the ban that could deliver his people from my hand, that your Elohim should be able to deliver you from my hand? And now, do not let Hizqiyahu deceive you or persuade you like this, and do not believe him, for no mighty one of any nation or reign was able to deliver his people from my hand or the hand of my fathers, much less your Elohim, to deliver you from my hand. And his servants spoke even more against Yahuah Elohim and against his servant Hizqiyahu. And he wrote letters to reproach Yahuah Elohim of Yisrael and to speak against him, saying, As the mighty ones of the nations of other lands have not delivered their people from my hand, so the Elohim of Hizqiyahu shall not deliver his people from my hand. Then they called out with a loud voice in the language of Yahudah to the people of Jerusalem who were on the wall, to frighten them and to trouble them in order to capture the city. And they spoke against the Elohim of Jerusalem as against the mighty ones of the people of the earth, the work of men's hands. And sovereign Hizqiyahu and the Nevi Yeshayahu, son of Amoz, prayed about this and cried out to the Shemayim. And Yahuah sent a messenger who cut down every mighty brave one, both the leader and the commander in the camp of the sovereign of Ashur. And he returned shamefaced to his own land and went into the house of his mighty one. And there some of his own offspring caused him to fall by the sword. Thus Yahuah saved Hizqiyahu and the inhabitants of Jerusalem from the hand of Sanherib, the sovereign of Ashur, and from the hand of all others, and guided them on every side. And many brought gifts to Yahuah at Jerusalem, and presents to Hizqiyahu, sovereign of Yahudah, and he was exalted in the eyes of all nations thereafter. In those days, Hizqiyahu was sick and near death, and he prayed to Yahuah, and he spoke to him and appointed a sign for him. However, Hizqiyahu did not repay according to the good done to him, for his heart was lifted up. Therefore wrath came upon him and upon Yahudah and Jerusalem. Then Hizqiyahu humbled himself for the pride of his heart, he and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, so that the wrath of Yahuah did not come upon them in the days of Hizqiyahu. And Hizqiyahu had much riches and esteem, and he made himself treasuries for silver and for gold and for precious stones and for spices and for shields and for all desirable utensils, and storehouses for the harvest of grain and wine and oil, and stalls for all kinds of livestock, and folds for flocks. And he made cities for himself and possessions of great numbers of flocks and herds, for Elohim gave him much property. And Hizqiyahu himself had stopped the upper outlet of the waters of Gihon and directed them to the west side of the city of David, and Hizqiyahu prospered in all his work. However, with the envoys of the princes of Babel, whom they sent to ask him about the wonder that was done in the land, Elohim left him in order to try him, to know all that was in his heart. And the rest of the acts of Hizqiyahu and his kindness, see, they are written in the vision of Yeshayahu the Nevi, son of Amoz, in the book of the sovereigns of Yahudah and Yisrael. So Hizqiyahu slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the upper tombs of the sons of David. And all Yahudah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem esteemed him at his death. And Manasseh his son reigned in his place.